I'm going to assume until next Wednesday. Believe it or not, I believe next Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. It is. So for this week and Monday and Tuesday, we'll get Genesis, which I think many of you are experts on now after my lengthy little series in Advent. So let's go to the text here. We're in chapter 4. So chapter 1 is the 7-day creation story. Chapter 2 is the creation of Adam and Eve, that story. And then chapter 3 is the fall, the first sin of Adam and Eve. And now in chapter 4, we have the children of Adam and Eve who don't behave very well. At least one of them doesn't. That of Cain. I always say, like, which one killed which, and I always say Cain killed Abel because Cain wasn't able. Okay, that's how you remember that. Okay, all right, Cain wasn't able. Some mystery here in the text, and I think the biggest mystery is, why did God approve Abel's sacrifice but not Cain's? And I think the general consensus is, the best guess consensus is that Abel gave God the best of his flock while Cain did not. Best guess scenario. Because if you read the rest of the Old Testament and the prophets, what's one of the critiques in terms of sacrifice? It's this idea that when they offer sacrifices in the temple, it's not the best of their flock. It's often the lame, the unwantables, the animals that might not be of use to the shepherds. They would be the ones that they would offer in the temples. And it's exactly going against what God wants. He wants the best of what we have. Even in the Passover, it's the firstborn lamb, right? Now, why is it the firstborn lamb? They're usually the most healthiest and therefore important to the flock in the sense that they are the producers. You would use the firstborn male to then reproduce the flock because they would have probably the healthiest genetic code, that their offspring would be the healthiest, which would then keep the flock alive. And so God's saying, give that which you're most dependent on and give it to me so that, and that way I will be the one that takes care of you, okay? And so there might be a little bit of this aspect here going on. But then the other kind of mysterious phrasing is that when God is talking to Cain, he says, if you do well, you can hold up your head, but if not, sin is a demon lurking at the door. His urge is towards you, yet you can be his master. And I guess speaking as kind of a passionate person in a sense, like when I get angry, there, especially like in golf. I mean, I'm not use a silly example, but when you're filled with anger, boy, aren't you a slave to it? And I think that's the warning here that God has given both Cain and us. And we just heard the gospel passage yesterday. Jesus raises the bar. He says, it says that you shall not kill, but I say to you, anyone who is angry with his brother is liable for punishment. In the longer gospel text, it says, if you call your brother wakwa, which is the Aramaic word for idiot, if you call him that, you'll be liable for punishment. This whole idea that this anger that we harbor and resent, we are a slave to it. It occupies our mind. It's all that we think about. It bothers us. And then it leads us to sin. Maybe not to sin to the direct person, but maybe sin in other areas where we let out that anger, sometimes on the people that we love the most. So you're very angry with work, you're frustrated, you're stressed. You go home and you let it out on your spouse and on your kids. It's enslaving. And so how do we let it go? Well, what I like to do is when I find myself in that situation and I can feel the negativity and the anger kind of risen and stirring within me, first of all, I recognize that it's happening. I recognize that I'm upset. And then I just then turn to the Lord right there in prayer. Invite him into the places where I'm hurting. Why am I upset? Okay, and sometimes I don't even know, or I just don't want to admit to it internally. And so it's turning to the Lord and saying, God, right here, this area in my heart, my area of my soul, something is not right. Okay, something is not right. And I just need you to come in and heal it. And I think I find myself when I turn to the Lord, things get better, and they get better quickly, at least internally, not the outside situation, but at least internally what's happening to me. I'm handing it over to God. Okay, I don't mean that in a cliche way. Incorporate God into all those areas where you feel like he doesn't belong. Belongs everywhere, especially in those places where we need to be saved. May God bless you.